Nowadays, artificial intelligence is penetrating the most unexpected areas, including psychotherapy. According to a Stanford University study, more than 2 million people monthly turn to digital psychotherapists. Applications like Wobot, Replica, and Uper offer 24/7 consultations, using algorithms trained on thousands of real therapeutic sessions. Some of them show impressive results. According to a study published in the journal Nature, Wobot users report a 30% reduction in depression symptoms after 2 weeks of regular interaction. But can we entrust an algorithm with our most intimate thoughts? Can a machine truly understand human pain? In a world where the wait list for a psychotherapist stretches for months, and the cost of a session is often inaccessible to many, digital assistants offer an alternative. They don't get tired, don't judge, and don't have prejudices. However, the main question remains open. Can artificial intelligence replace human understanding in such a delicate matter as healing the soul? The history of digital psychotherapy begins in the 1960s, when computers occupied entire rooms, and the internet existed only in the dreams of futurists. In 1966, programmer Joseph Weizenbaum created ELIZA, the world's first chatbot, simulating a psychotherapist. Using simple templates and reflecting the interlocutor's phrases, ELIZA created the illusion of understanding. "I feel depressed," a person would write. "Tell me more about your feelings of depression," the machine would reply. Primitive by modern standards, but the effect was astonishing. People opened up to the program, shared their innermost thoughts. Some even asked to be left alone with the computer. Weizenbaum was shocked by how easily people anthropomorphized the machine and projected empathy onto it that it did not possess. For many years after ELIZA, the development of therapeutic bots progressed slowly. A real breakthrough occurred in the 2000s with the advent of natural language processing systems. In 2017, former clinical psychologist Alison Darcy launched Wobot, the first chatbot based on cognitive behavioral therapy. Unlike ELIZA, Wobot didn't just reflect the user's words, but offered structured help, tracked mood, and taught techniques for managing thoughts. The next qualitative leap occurred with the emergence of large language models. Systems based on GPT and similar technologies demonstrate an unprecedented ability to maintain meaningful dialogue, recognize emotional nuances, and adapt to individual communication styles. They analyze not only words but also context, interaction history, and can remember details of the user's personal history. Modern neural networks study millions of psychotherapeutic dialogues, scientific research, and clinical recommendations, becoming increasingly similar to real specialists. How does a modern neural network, acting as a psychotherapist, actually work? At the core of such systems are complex natural language processing algorithms. Similar to a linguist with years of experience, AI analyzes not just individual words, but entire semantic constructs, grasping the subtlest nuances of human speech. When you write, "I feel depressed," the system recognizes not only the fact of a negative state, but also its intensity, context, and potential causes. Modern neural networks are capable of extracting key emotional markers from text, signs of anxiety, depression, fear, or anger. To do this, they are trained on millions of examples of real therapeutic conversations, scientific articles, and clinical guidelines. Vector representation technology allows the machine to understand the semantic proximity of concepts and build connections between seemingly disparate patient statements. Most therapeutic neural networks use a multi-level analysis architecture. In the first stage, the system determines the overall tone of the message and basic emotions. Then, it identifies cognitive distortions, irrational thoughts and beliefs characteristic of various psychological problems. At the third level, the algorithm compares the obtained information with known therapeutic protocols and forms the most appropriate response strategy. Personalization is a key aspect of digital psychotherapy. With each interaction, the system accumulates data about the user, their vocabulary, typical reactions, topics that elicit an emotional response, preferred communication styles. This allows the therapeutic approach to be adapted over time to the specific individual. Advanced systems can track the user's state dynamics, creating a kind of progress map. They analyze changes in the emotional coloring of messages, the frequency of mentioning specific problems, the appearance of new topics, and linguistic markers of improvement or deterioration. Technologies for recognizing crisis states are particularly interesting. Artificial intelligence is trained to identify signs of suicidal thoughts, acute psychotic states, or other urgent situations requiring immediate intervention from a human specialist. Science does not stand still, and the question of AI's effectiveness in psychotherapy is actively being researched worldwide. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of Medical Internet Research in 2022 examined the results of 43 clinical studies involving over 11,000 patients. The results are impressive. Digital therapeutic interventions demonstrated an average effect size of 0.63 in treating depression, comparable to traditional cognitive behavioral therapy, where this figure is 0.70. For anxiety disorders, neural network solutions showed effectiveness in 64% of cases, only 8% lower than a human psychotherapist. Successes in working with post-traumatic stress disorder are particularly notable. A University of California study showed that 85% of veterans who used a specialized AI application for 12 weeks were able to reduce the intensity of PTSD symptoms by 40% or more. It is curious that the effectiveness of digital therapy varies significantly depending on the type of disorder. When working with phobias and panic attacks, AI therapists demonstrate results almost identical to humans. At the same time, in the treatment of bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, their effectiveness drops to 30% of traditional therapy's indicators. The phenomenon of digital placebo deserves special attention. When patients experience improvements simply from believing in the effectiveness of a high-tech solution. Stanford researchers found that patients who were convinced they were interacting with advanced AI, even if it was a basic algorithm, showed a 15% higher rate of improvement. The adherence to treatment rate is particularly interesting. Users of digital therapists complete the full course of therapy in an average of 73% of cases, whereas in traditional psychotherapy, this figure does not exceed 60%. Imagine a world where psychological help is available at any time of day, costs many times less than traditional therapy, and requires no overcoming of geographical barriers. This is not science fiction, but the reality of digital psychotherapy based on artificial intelligence. One of the key advantages of AI therapists is their round-the-clock availability. At 3 in the morning, when anxious thoughts keep you awake, or on a holiday, when ordinary specialists are unavailable, a digital assistant is always ready to listen and support. Financial accessibility also plays a crucial role. If the average cost of a session with a psychotherapist is 5,000 to 15,000 rubles, then a monthly subscription to a quality AI application will cost approximately the same amount, but with an unlimited number of interactions. For residents of small towns and rural areas, where finding a qualified psychologist is practically impossible, digital solutions become the only available alternative. Anonymity is another powerful argument in favor of AI therapy. A study conducted by Harvard Medical School showed that 60% of people suffering from psychological problems do not seek help due to fear of stigmatization. Communication with a neural network completely removes this barrier. No one will know about your diagnosis. No one will see you leaving a psychotherapist's office. This feature is especially valuable for teenagers, middle-aged men, and representatives of conservative cultures, where seeking a psychologist is often perceived as a sign of weakness. The absence of judgment and bias is a quality in which AI paradoxically surpasses humans. A machine has no personal beliefs, prejudices, or hidden emotional reactions. It will not judge you for your unconventional sexual orientation, political views, or unsightly past actions. For many people, this creates an unprecedentedly safe space for self-disclosure. We've talked a lot about the possibilities of artificial intelligence in psychotherapy. But it's time to look at the fundamental limitations that are currently insurmountable for any algorithms. The main problem lies in the very essence of empathy, the ability to truly feel another person's emotional state. A neural network can simulate understanding, recognize emotional markers in text, and even generate appropriate therapeutic responses. But it cannot experience genuine feelings. Behind every empathetic response lies only a statistical model predicting the most suitable reaction based on training data. This is fundamentally different from human empathy, which includes not only cognitive understanding but also emotional resonance. Psychologist Carl Rogers, the founder of client-centered therapy, argued that true healing occurs through a genuine connection between two people. Can such a connection arise with a system that lacks its own experience of suffering, joy, loss, or love? The ethical aspect of using AI in psychotherapy raises no fewer questions. Who is responsible if an algorithm gives potentially dangerous advice to a vulnerable person? The developer, the company, or the user themselves? The issue of confidentiality causes particular concern. Users share their most intimate experiences with digital therapists, not always understanding that this data may be used to train systems or analyzed by third parties. There is also a risk of developing dependence on an artificial interlocutor who never tires, never judges, and is always available. Such an idealized form of support can make it difficult to build real human relationships, which require compromise and acceptance of imperfection. The inability of AI to recognize critical conditions is another serious limitation. Despite all achievements, algorithms still miss about 20% of cases where a person needs emergency help. Behind the cold statistics lie real human lives. Despite impressive achievements, artificial intelligence has clear boundaries of application in psychiatry. There are conditions where algorithmic therapy is not just ineffective, it is potentially dangerous. In severe mental disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or clinical depression with psychotic elements, a digital therapist is unable to provide the necessary level of observation and intervention. A study conducted by the American Psychiatric Association showed that in 87% of acute psychoses, neural networks failed to correctly identify symptoms and offer adequate help. The use of AI in cases of suicidal tendencies poses a particular danger. Even the most sophisticated algorithms recognize only explicit verbal markers of suicidal intentions, missing indirect signs that a human specialist can intuitively grasp. In crisis situations requiring immediate intervention, the machine mind loses to the human mind in speed and accuracy of response. A critical drawback of AI therapy is the impossibility of physical intervention. When a person is in an acute crisis, a human specialist can call emergency services, contact relatives, or even physically prevent self-harm. A neural network is limited to the digital space and is powerless in a critical situation. The issue of responsibility remains unresolved legally and ethically. Who is responsible for the consequences of recommendations given by an algorithm? The developer, the user, or no one? In the case of traditional therapy, Responsibility is clearly defined by professional standards and legislation. In the world of digital psychiatry, these boundaries are blurred, creating a dangerous legal vacuum. Neural networks are also ineffective in working with patients with dual diagnoses. For example, mental disorders combined with drug addiction. Such cases require a comprehensive approach and coordination between different specialists, a task beyond the capabilities of modern algorithms. Let's put man and machine face to face. What will we see? In terms of diagnostic accuracy, modern neural networks demonstrate impressive results. A study by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology showed that leading AI systems correctly identify depression in 82% of cases, only 5% worse than the average psychiatrist. At the same time, the machine never tires or loses concentration, which ensures consistent results regardless of the time of day or the number of patients. In adhering to therapeutic protocols, artificial intelligence is flawless. If a person can deviate from the methodology under the influence of intuition or fatigue, the algorithm strictly follows the embedded rules. This is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, a guarantee of quality. On the other, an inability to creatively adapt methods. Nonverbal communication is the Achilles heel of digital therapists. 70% of information in communication is transmitted without words, through facial expressions, gestures, posture, tone of voice. A psychologist notices how a patient looks away during certain topics, how their breathing changes, how their hands tremble. A neural network is deprived of this channel of perception. It works only with text, or, at best, with voice. Intuition and creative thinking are another area where humans are still unattainable. An experienced therapist can sense something is wrong, even in the absence of obvious signs. Offer an unexpected approach or metaphor that suddenly opens a new path to solving the problem. Machine learning, despite all its achievements, remains limited by the scope of its data and algorithms. In individualizing the approach, the picture is ambiguous. AI processes colossal amounts of patient data, remembers every detail, and never forgets important information. However, a human therapist possesses a unique ability for empathetic resonance. They not only understand the patient's problem, but also feel it on an emotional level, which allows them to find deeply personal approaches to each case. I didn't want to go to a psychologist. It's embarrassing to admit, but I thought it was for weaklings. When my wife left and problems at work started, I just downloaded an app with an AI therapist. I thought I'd laugh and delete it. But something changed after the third conversation. For the first time in months, I poured my heart out. No one judged, no one rushed, no one looked at me with pity. 2 weeks later, I started sleeping at night. A month later, I was back at the gym. No, my problems didn't magically disappear, but I learned to cope with anxiety, says Andre, a 32-year-old engineer from Novosibirsk. Marina's story, a teacher from a small town, illustrates another side of digital therapy. In our town, there are only 2 psychologists, and one of them is my colleague. When panic attacks started, I couldn't go to her. Everyone would find out. An online therapist became the only way out. Anonymity was a crucial factor for me. Not all stories are so positive. Ekaterina, a medical student, shares her disappointment. After the 5th session, I realized I was talking to emptiness. The answers seemed formulaic, like from a textbook. When I described complex feelings, the algorithm offered trite solutions. There was a lack of human warmth, of real understanding. According to a survey of 2,000 AI therapy users conducted by the University of California, the main reasons for choosing digital solutions are financial accessibility, 71%, anonymity, 64%, lack of geographical restrictions, 58%, and 24/7 availability, 52%. The experience of teenagers is particularly noteworthy. 16-year-old Sophia says, "My parents didn't understand my depression. They thought it was whims." The school psychologist is obliged to inform them about our conversations.
The AI app became my salvation. I could be honest without fearing the consequences. Many users note that after starting with digital therapy, they eventually decided to consult a live specialist. AI helped me acknowledge the problem and understand that seeking help is normal, says Dimitri, a former military man. The future of psychotherapy likely lies not in the opposition of human and machine, but in their harmonious union. A hybrid therapy model where artificial intelligence works in tandem with a human psychotherapist is already showing impressive results. In such a model, AI takes on the role of a high-tech assistant, enhancing the specialist's capabilities. The Mayo Clinic implemented a system where a neural network analyzes patients' speech between sessions, identifying alarming patterns and providing the therapist with a detailed report before the meeting. The effectiveness of depression treatment with this approach increased by 28%. Artificial intelligence is becoming an indispensable assistant in diagnostics, analyzing not only verbal markers, but also micro-expressions, tone of voice, breathing rate, all those nonverbal signals that a human might miss. Algorithms process colossal volumes of data on similar cases, offering the therapist statistically validated treatment strategies. Between sessions, the patient receives constant support from a digital assistant who helps with homework, monitors mood, and reminds them of self-regulation techniques. This approach is particularly effective when working with phobias and anxiety disorders, where between therapist appointments, the patient can practice exposure techniques with AI support. The synergistic effect also manifests in the training of specialists themselves. Neural networks analyze thousands of successful therapeutic sessions, identifying the most effective techniques and approaches. Psychotherapists receive personalized feedback on their work, seeing blind spots and areas for development. The hybrid model also resolves an ethical dilemma. Responsibility for treatment remains with the human specialist, but the quality of care increases thanks to technology. The patient receives the best of both worlds, the human warmth and empathy of a live therapist, combined with the tireless precision and accessibility of artificial intelligence. Legislative regulation of AI psychotherapy is currently in an active formation stage. In many countries, legal norms are not keeping pace with the rapid development of technology, creating a dangerous vacuum. The European Union was the first to take serious steps in this direction, adopting the Artificial Intelligence Act in 2023, which classifies psychotherapeutic systems as high risk. This entails mandatory certification, regular audits, and increased transparency requirements for algorithms. In the United States, the Food and Drug Administration is developing a special framework for evaluating digital therapeutic tools, equating them with medical devices. Russian legislation is still taking its first steps in this area. A law on experimental legal regimes for AI in healthcare is being prepared. Ethical standards for AI therapist developers are being formed at the intersection of medical ethics and technological responsibility. The key principle is informed consent. The user must clearly understand that they are interacting with a machine, not a human, and be aware of the limitations of such therapy and potential risks. Data confidentiality becomes even more critical than in traditional therapy. While a human psychologist is bound by medical secrecy, neural networks process personal data within commercial systems, where there are risks of leaks or misuse. A particularly acute question is responsibility for outcomes. Who will be held accountable if an algorithm provides a recommendation that leads to a patient's worsening condition? The developer? The owning company? Or the user themselves? The International Association of Psychologists proposes a model of distributed responsibility, where developers are responsible for technical reliability, and users make informed decisions about applying recommendations.
Many experts call for the creation of independent oversight councils, including psychiatrists, ethicists, and lawyers, who will assess the safety of AI systems before their market release. Looking into the coming decades, we see how artificial intelligence in psychotherapy evolves from primitive interlocutors to systems with the rudiments of emotional intelligence. Already today, leading laboratories around the world are working on emotion recognition technologies capable of detecting the slightest changes in voice, facial expressions, and even human heart rate. According to forecasts from the Institute for the Future of Humanity, by 2030, neural networks will be able to recognize emotional states with accuracy exceeding that of an average person. But will a machine truly be able to understand what it recognizes? The real breakthrough is expected in the creation of emotional artificial intelligence, systems capable not just of imitating, but of modeling emotional processes. This does not mean that AI will experience feelings like a human, but it will be able to create internal models of emotional states based on billions of examples of human experience. The profession of psychotherapist will likely transform, but not disappear. Future specialists will become a kind of conductors of a technological orchestra, guiding and coordinating the work of various AI systems. Routine aspects of therapy, diagnosis, and basic techniques will shift to machines, freeing humans for creative and deeply empathetic interaction. Perhaps we will see new specializations: therapeutic algorithm engineer, digital psychotherapy curator, specialist in integrating human and artificial intelligence in the treatment of mental disorders. The most radical changes may occur in the field of neurointerfaces, technologies for direct connection to the nervous system, currently in their infancy, could by mid-century allow for the creation of fundamentally new forms of therapy, where AI will directly interact with the brain's neural networks, helping to restructure pathological thinking patterns. At the crossroads of human and machine intelligence, a new paradigm of psychological assistance is born. One that does not replace human warmth, but expands our capabilities to understand and heal each other. In this synthesis, perhaps, lies the true future of psychotherapy.